She had already had her cancer diagnosis at that point. She had opened this second location. She had lost what was a director of operations. And I knew she was not going to focus on her own healing. I walked away from what looked like a really good career on paper for the love of family. So when she passed, I'll say that that's not the moment that I took over Fit Body Bootcamp. We knew that the first order of business was to sell West Lebanon Fit Body Bootcamp. So we went to World Conference. Everything shifted for me. I was so inspired by the event. I was so inspired by seeing the brand in that capacity and being with my team and all of the firepower. I remember sitting in this chair with tears in my eyes and saying to them, I'm ready. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I want to do this with you guys. I'm all in.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast.
Hey friends, cannot wait to introduce you to my dear friend Sarah Dumont, who's been our brand for a very long time. In fact, in 2020, she moved back home for family support at the news of her mom, Lisa, who was one of our first Fit Body owners back in 2009's cancer diagnosis. And she was there to support her family. And in 2021, at the tragic passing of Lisa, decided to go all in and continue her legacy, and now runs one of the most successful Fit Body locations. So cannot wait to introduce you and really allow you to hear Sarah's story. Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast, a show dedicated for high performers to teach leadership so that way you can 10x your income, your impact, and your legacy. My name is Bryce Henson if you're new to the show, and I'm your Fitness CEO. And today is a very special episode, and I have a very special guest, Miss Sarah Dumont. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bryce. I'm stoked.
Well, I'm stoked as well. We've been friends for quite some time, and this is definitely and I say this with every fiber in my being, a very special episode for who you are, who your mother was into our organization. And that's going to be my first really question is, how did you, stumble your way into Fit Body Bootcamp organization? And I ask it in that way because it's definitely an unconventional way. It's a very serious way, but there's going to be a lot of, good learning lessons from that. So
yeah, we go way back, Fit Body and I. So my family and I moved from Northern California to Vermont in 2006. And my dad had actually moved out slightly ahead of us, a couple months, and my mom, my brother, and I joined him maybe 3 months after. And when we arrived there, he wanted to support my mom in continuing on her career in health and fitness and nutrition and all the good stuff. And he was working out at a small local gym at the time called Ripples Lifting, which he loves to do, and introduced my mom to the woman who was running the facility at the time, Marty. And they kind of hit it off from the jump, and they actually started running boot camp sessions, outdoor boot camp sessions outside of this gym. And so that was kind of her first taste at boot camp, pre-Fit Body boot camp, that is.
Your mom's?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And it really created a buzz in the community. People were really eating it up. They loved the style of training. There was nothing like that in our community. And, that progressed, and she was really enjoying that. And with what I can only assume was a night down the internet rabbit hole, she found Bedros Keuilian and Steve Hockman online.
Oh, wow.
And she, unbeknownst to us, purchased this business in a box. And it arrived at our house. Again, we had no idea at that point. And, I was chatting with my dad a few weeks ago about how this unfolded. And he said, he got home from work and she said, "Hi, honey." And he knew by the tone of her voice right there that something had happened. Something had happened. And, she was definitely the kind of person who lived by, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And she was fearless in that way. So the box showed up, and inside the box was a set of kind of motivational videos that Bedros and Steve had put together. And my dad was telling me about one of them was Bedros and Steve in front of an elephant, and it was called The Start of Something Big. And it certainly was the start of something big for my mom and for our family. And, through their coaching and kind of launching what was Fit Body Bootcamp at the time, a licensee program rather, mm-hmm. She was, coached to find a space to rent where she could execute sessions.
And to give some context here, just from a time frame, this is probably like 2009, 2010?
2009, on the money, yep.
Cool.
So she found a place called Le Studio, which was a gymnastics studio in our town, and linked up with the woman who was running that and was able to secure some time slots to execute sessions. But it's really fun looking back on what we call the Le Studio days, because the Fit Body we know and love now was nothing like that Fit Body First of all, the sessions were an hour. And there was no clock, there was no timer, there was only either her little watch or her little timer. And we always joke, she would always refer to her impeccable timeability, which I don't even think that's a word. We knew it was not impeccable. You know, she was a little bit squirrely, she was a little all over the place, and we loved her for it. But she, you know, for instance, she would say to the group, okay, 10 seconds left. And then she would go to help a client for 30 to 45 seconds, and everybody would be dying watching her like, where is she? And then she'd come back, okay, 10 more seconds.
2 minutes later, she comes back.
They're like rolling their eyes.
We're dying right now.
Exactly. And, you know, she was always known for her extremely long warm-ups. We'd get 20 minutes in, we'd be sweating, dying, like, when is it over? And she'd say, we're almost done with the warm-up. So, you know, a lot of good memories there. You know, she started just launching with a couple evening sessions, I think it was, and really minimal equipment, you know, nothing like we open our Fit Bodies with now. But she certainly used the facility to her advantage. We would do pull-ups on the bars and tricep dips on the beams, and she, you know, if someone was misbehaving or talking over her or chatting in the back of the room, she'd, you know, call them out and either put them on timeout against the wall in a wall sit, or she would send them down the runway to jump into the foam pit and then watch them crawl back out. So, you know, just so different from everything that we have now, but really fond memories of that. And, you know, I remember her bringing me in at the time. I was in high school, and she was like, Sarah, I need you to, you know, babysit my clients' children while they work out, you know, for free of charge, of course, because she was really looking to build that clientele. So she was there for a couple years, and that was kind of a great launch point for her. Again, another really positive buzz in our community. And in the summer of 2011, Hurricane Irene hit southern Vermont and New Hampshire. And I'll call it, you know, a perfect storm, because at that time she had made a connection with a gentleman who owned a building. Said building was flooded out and needed to be completely rebuilt, and she was able to kind of build that relationship with him and work with him in doing a full build out for her own space, which is still the space we're in today.
Oh, how cool.
And so when you talk about kind of non-traditional build out, I mean, you know, it was ground up. He helped her. He was the only guy helping her. Everything else was her and my dad. And, you know, I was just thinking the other day about how when she opened there, I was 18 and I was getting ready to head off to college. And I remember her bribing me with a 6-pack of Bud Light Platinums to help her grout the entire front of the building, you know, all the bathrooms, the offices.
Did you take the bait?
Of course I took the bait. 6-pack of Platinums? Are you kidding me?
You're 18? Okay, let's go.
I'm 18, yeah. And, you know, I remember just being on the floor with her for hours, one of us grouting, one of us falling behind, wiping it all up, and just laughing and sharing so much love about what was about to unfold and just all the excitement. And here we are 14 years later.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to dive in a little bit, and your mom was one of the first people I ever met in a brand. I joined in 2012, and I think I went to the first World Conference a few months before I launched, and I met her there. And for a series of years, so she was, you know, a life point, a touch point for me, especially my early days, being super green and being at the front and just very excited, but also very nervous, writing a ton of notes. And then she'd be able to provide me guidance and wisdom and insight. And it was just a very, very great relationship. And, you know, when I think of Fit Body and I think the story of Fit Body, you know, I think of your mom, like laying down a foundation. So I want to honor her for a second. You've told a little bit of the story of like getting things going with, you know, 2009, 2011, launching your own location. But how would you describe your mom's personality, and how would you describe the way she was able to create community? Because you just mentioned like the fun, the engagement. So if you want to be able to color in the details for our audience, number one, on your mom, but then also two, to showcase, you know, what it takes and the qualities and characteristics to be a successful, you know, owner in our business. Yeah,
well, you know, I think the timeline of us moving to Vermont in 2006, excuse me, and then her launching in 2009 in a completely new area of the country. You know, she had this whole network of fitness and health professionals and clients back in Northern California that she had to leave behind. And I think how quickly that evolved, you know, of course she did other things between 2006 and 2009 in the field in our little town, which is certainly little, speaks to just how magnetic she was and infectious. And, you know, in looking back at those studio days and kind of the banter and the humor and the fun, I mean, she was, don't get it twisted for a second, she was very tough on us. I mean, with minimal equipment, there was a lot of running, there was a lot of suicide drills, and but she had this really unique ability to kind of create synergy between hard work and empathy. And I think that is what, you know, made people feel so drawn to her, is that she, you know, she created a safe space. They felt very comfortable with her, but they were going to work hard. And she had that kind of personality that you wanted to work hard for her. You wanted to do right by her. You wanted to make her proud. And just, you know, she operated total love. Everything was love. And whether it was tough love or the softer love. And I think that's what drew people to her, really. And she was very present always in her business, you know, despite opening another location. She was so loved. And, you know, Sara always talks about Coach Sara, our head coach, about how when she started with the brand, the only reason she started coaching was so that my mom could go on vacation, because my mom was bartering and saying, oh, I have to go do this so somebody can, you know, teach this session. And Sara was like, well, I can do it, you know, and now here we are with her 12 years later. But she worked hard, and she was just always others before self. And, you know, I think that's huge in the business realm, to not lose sight of who you're really operating for, and, you know, all of the people that you're taking care of. But the number one word that stands out is infectious. She just had a laugh that is just so memorable, and, you know, this big bright smile and just love. She was just all love.
Amen to that. And just hearing you recount, one, I think the three qualities that we look for, we've reverse engineered being in this brand for 15 years, that make the most successful franchise partners. The first quality is passion about people and fitness, and even more so people, because we're in the people industry. You know, when I think of your mom, I think very much passion about people and very much passion about fitness. She radiated it, and you used the word magnetic. That's actually how I would describe your mom. She was extremely magnetic, and I've never heard it in this way that you just laid down, but the combination of hard work and then empathy. Because my first thought of her was like fun, outgoing, etc. But then when you got her in motion, like, she packed a punch. And I think that's a really, really good quality that I see in you, and also in some of our most successful franchise partners, like being able to connect with people, you know, create that magnetism towards people, create a community, push them, but make it fun in the process.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that was a superpower. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was kind of foundation. Now I want to kind of fast forward, you know, and to your kind of journey, if you will, and then we'll kind of bring it back to recent times. But that happens in 2011. Then where does Sara go? Yeah,
where does Sara go? So I decided to move home and support her in 2020. You know, she had already had her cancer diagnosis at that point. She had opened this second location. She had lost what was a director of operations, you know, role at the time. And I knew, because of all of the things we just discussed in terms of her personality, that if she didn't have someone to help her, she was not going to focus on her own healing, because she did not want to let anyone down. She was all about everyone else. And so, you know, I walked away from what looked like a really good career on paper for the love of family, to be with my family. And, you know, I didn't actually intend to work for her when I first decided to move home. I just was going to go and be present, not knowing what the future held with her health. And of course she wrote me in, because that was the kind of person she was. And yeah, one of the best decisions I ever made. And, you know, those early days in working together were such a blur because of everything that was going on. And so we had very little overlap before she passed, because she was traveling to Arizona for treatment. She was, you know, opening this second location, and also she was really trying to take that stress response down and heal, because that's what she had been directed to do. She used stress as a superpower, but she was up here. You know, she always wanted to do more. And so when she passed in 2021, there was 2 locations that my dad and I inherited. And, you know, I'll say that's not the moment that I took over Fit Body Boot Camp. You know, there was so much that evolved between losing her and the point that I'll discuss, that was really the turning point in me, embracing this opportunity. So when she passed and we inherited these 2 locations, we knew that the first order of business was to sell West Lebanon Fit Body Boot Camp.
Just to condense to one.
Correct.
And before we actually go there, just want to take a step back, just to showcase to the audience like where you currently were in your life, etc. So I want to slow that down if it's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
So 2020 is really when you moved back home to connect and be closer to family.
Correct.
And when did your mom get diagnosed with cancer?
She already had her diagnosis at that point. It was 2019. She had her kidney taken out, which is where it started. The cancer ended up metastasizing. But so 2019 in the fall, and then I, kind of phased out of what was my previous career it was COVID. So we were kind of phasing out already in the industry. I was working in corporate food and beverage.
I was going to say, what were you doing? Like,
yeah.
what was, your life? What were your profession? Kind of where were you at as a person there?
I was living in Boston. I was doing corporate food service and executing high-level events for Fidelity Investments. And, COVID, no events, no reason to meet in person, share food, share drink. So that was a really kind of seamless, there's so much divine intervention in terms of the timeline, but it was a really seamless transition for me to exit that. And so I spent some time at home during that summer.
And your focus really was just to be there for your mom, be there for your mom and dad and your family.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't know what that role was going to look like. I had no idea what my life was going to look like, but all I knew was that I wanted to be near her.
Yeah.
And
and Boston is probably what, like 3 or 4 hour drive?
2.5, 3 hours, depending on how fast you go.
Okay.
So that's kind of the timeline. And again, I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't move home thinking I need to be here so I can take over the business. If anything happens to her, I didn't think anything was going to happen to her. In my mind, she was unstoppable.
She's like super.
She's super, yeah. So there was just so many unknowns at that point, but.
Okay, so thank you for that. And I want to kind of set the audience. So that's where you currently were. Obviously, you hear the diagnosis and you want to be back for family. So
right.
Now we'll kind of continue on that journey.
Yeah, so we lose her, we lost her in September of 2021, and we knew we needed to sell one of these businesses. One was more than enough at that point, given we had no, foresight on owning or operating.
You're parachuting in this business to begin with. It wasn't your vision. You laid the foundation.
Right.
Like, I can only imagine how challenging a situation that would have felt.
Yeah, and truthfully, selling West Lebanon at that point was such a welcome distraction for me, because it felt like it's something that I could really put my energy into and check it off the list. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was, versus taking over, you're embarking on this large journey of unknowns and, a large future.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas selling the business, I'm like, okay, I can do this, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. And the reason we were so adamant about making sure that we were able to sell that business to a suitable new owner was because that was such a dream of hers, to open that location. And, watching her open that location, despite the diagnosis, despite the pandemic, despite maybe not being quite ready, she did it.
Yeah. And,
that was really special to behold for all of us. And so my dad and I knew that we wanted to keep that dream alive. And, the process of selling it, we had a lot of help and support from our Profit First coach, Erin Smith. She had owned a CrossFit gym years ago before getting into Profit First, and had sold said CrossFit gym. So she had a lot of experience in that realm, and she was pivotal for us, because in those moments after losing her, there was so much to sort through that we had no idea. We weren't prepared. We weren't prepared at all. And because we were being present with my mom, and that's all you can do when someone is in that, vulnerable position. You're not thinking about getting yourself set up for what's going to be left. You're just thinking about being there and soaking up that human. So Erin was just absolutely instrumental to our success in not only selling the business, but just learning the ins and outs of both locations from a financial standpoint.
Is there a learning lesson or a takeaway that you can provide our audience on why that was impactful, or if you would do it over again? I'm curious just to unpack that, because it seems like a very challenging, very vulnerable situation, and now you're up against, okay, now I got to sell location. To your point, it was actually a good distraction, but
right.
Looking back, what was the big lesson in that?
In selling it?
Yeah, like that transition, that period.
Well, trusting for sure. I still believe that Erin was an angel that my mom put in our lives to help guide us through that process. But just, sometimes you don't know the how or the what, but you know the why. Mm-hmm. And we knew what her why was, and that the facility needed to stay operational. Mm-hmm. And we can do hard things, and you don't need all of the answers before you decide to take that step and do them. And along the way, even if you're in a period of, immense grief or pain, there's going to be so much love and so many people around you that are placed on your path that are going to be able to support you. Mm-hmm. And, trusting that the universe is going to deliver on that, and trusting, every day waking up, it's all going to be okay. Like, we can do this. Even though I have no idea what I'm doing, we'll get through it. So I would just say, not letting fear stand in the way. I mean, we all have self-doubt and fear, and that's okay. But choosing to not let us paralyze us, choosing to not let that paralyze us in taking the next step forward is pivotal to every journey.
I heard this a while back, I think from John Maxwell. It's okay to be scared, but you need just to do it scared.
Right.
And that's really what I'm taking away from your
Absolutely.
message here. So on that point, continue on. It seems like you're at a point now you transitioned the first business off?
Yes. So we were able to sell the business, and that was in April of 2022. And then in May of 2022, we went to World Conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. My first World Conference, holy smokes. And again, leading up to that point, I was really kind of floundering. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I wanted this. I just was trying to continue taking those steps forward on a daily basis. But that's about where it stopped, the daily basis.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking long term. I wasn't, I was crippled with the grief and just crippled with the overwhelm of it all. So we went to World Conference. I had an amazing time, and that's kind of when, everything shifted for me. I was so inspired by the event. I was so inspired by seeing the brand in that capacity and being with my team and all of the firepower. So we returned home from World Conference, and we were executing our Unpacking the Box meeting in our lobby with Coach Sara and Coach Chrissy, or the two coaches that make up my leadership team with me. And I remember, sitting in this chair with tears in my eyes and saying to them, I'm ready. Like, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. I want to do this with you guys. I'm all in. And, I remember Chrissy looking at me with tears in her eyes and saying, oh my gosh, you have no idea how happy I am to hear you say that. Because, for 8 months, I know how difficult it was for them to come into work every day and just not know what the future held. And they were really graceful with me and like, this doesn't have to be your dream. They were really sensitive to everything I had been through. But it was at that point that I really decided I'm doing this.
What was it for you, Sara?
Well, her legacy, the brand has been huge in really honoring her with me. You guys have done so many amazing things to honor her, including a nice tribute at World Conference. I've always been passionate about people. I've always been passionate about health and fitness. And it was just excitement. That fear had morphed into excitement. And I saw all of the potential that was in front of me. And I knew all along that I had this incredible opportunity in front of me. I was freaking terrified.
Oh, yeah.
But again, sometimes we have to give ourselves that push to be okay with being afraid and deciding we want to do it anyways. And so that's what it was. It was just not succumbing to that fear and, doing her proud. And I would do anything to keep that legacy alive.
You've definitely done her proud.
Thank you.
So now let's talk about that. Like, you have the meeting with your leadership team. Now, there's a clear light in your eyes. You're not treading water anymore. You're like, hey, this is the direction we go. How did everything unfold? And I'll prod you along as well. But just outside looking in for our viewers, you've had just an incredible breakout year. It's been inspiring to see in it, outside eyes, but of course, connecting with my brother who oversees our coaching and getting, feedback from my team, it just things have clicked. It would be the best way I can describe it. So want to, provide you the platform to kind of tell how and why.
Well, every day upon losing her was a challenge, and every day now is still a challenge, right? And I've stumbled plenty along the way, but really going all in on myself and recognizing the person that I needed to become if I was going to take on this immense responsibility. And it's been so graceful of a transition. Like, to your point, I have these pinch me moments. I always say to our team, because we're always looking to get better, we're always looking to do more. And I have to often say, guys, but remember where we were like 2 years ago and all the stuff that we've, implemented and done. And, that's kind of something to watch out for in the business world. Becoming an entrepreneur is when you're so forward focused, you have to pull yourself back and recognize all of the amazing things that you've done.
Amen.
And, I think the biggest call to action from the start was studying leadership and getting in with my team. And, I became the leader by default. And that, for anyone who studies leadership, knows that means virtually nothing, right?
And that's a very, I feel for you, been in the leadership game for a long time. It's not an easy position for you to be in, one, dealing with the grief and a business that you don't have a lot of insight to, and then you kind of inherit in it, but you're not totally sure if this is the direction you want to go. Then you have to develop leadership skills and then get their buy-in, and there's a lot of things going on. So I want to honor you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, and thinking back, I feel like it's been such a non-traditional journey.
Totally.
I mean, first of all, I sold a business before I owned a business, is what I felt like, which is not typical. And also just, again, becoming the leader by default. So many other of our fellow franchise partners, this is a dream that they have. They open with that fire and that passion. And rather than, having that and acting on it, it was in front of me, and I had to make the choice to rise up. And, I also had to let go of the person that maybe I thought I was going to be at 27 years old with a robust social life. And I have a lot of amazing friends that I've had for a long time where I live, and just being more selective in how I choose my time, and realizing really quickly that, I couldn't be this person that I was and do the great things that I knew that our business was capable of.
Did you have that moment of awareness or clarity, or how did that dawn on you?
It was slow. It was starting, it was more of realizing, okay, if I party with my friends on the weekend, on Monday morning, I'm not ready to serve our community. I'm not ready to be the most level-headed leader I can be. Not that I was any party animal or anything like that, but just really dialing in those habits. And growing my team with me. To start, I had to earn their trust.
Yeah.
Even though I vocalize like, I'm all in, I'm here. Again, that's just lip service, right? And understanding that, they all have intricacies that I knew nothing about, and I knew them for years, but not in the capacity that I know them now, or not in the capacity that someone when you're truly invested in their growth and you're, embarking on this journey together.
You had to earn their trust. Specifically, what were some strategy or things you did to do that?
I stopped worrying about myself, and I started worrying more about them. Not worrying, but putting more focus into them. And that's what it is. It's that I stopped thinking, I stopped falling victim to all the things happening to me. And I just made the decision that I was going to go toe to toe with all of the challenges and all of the opportunities for growth. And many of those were outside myself, and they needed to know that I was invested in them, and that I wasn't just trying to get through my to-do list every day, or trying to figure out how am I going to do this thing, or I'm the victim, I lost my mom, I have all this stuff. No, it's not about me anymore. It's about them. And I'm so proud to say that every coach that was on our team when my mom passed is still on our team. And I think that speaks volumes to her legacy and our ability to maintain it.
And you.
And me. Thanks.
No, that's absolutely incredible. I'm kind of leading the witness here, but how would you say your relationship with your team is?
Again, so much of it is a blur because of everything that was going on at the beginning, but I had some serious imposter syndrome when I first took over. again, with becoming the leader by default, I think it was really hard for my team to see me as the leader. You know, I was the owner's daughter, and I came in, and my initial role was more of a director of operations, and I was kind of taking care of more admin stuff. But in us growing together, you know, I think that they've gotten to know the real me, and I think that I can say the same about them. And, you know, I firmly believe that in order to build that relationship, you have to love people. You have to love up on them. And we're just so candid with each other, and we're so transparent about our own vulnerabilities, you know, coming in knowing nothing, and still, like, I'm not afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you probably have a better idea, teammate, than I do about that. You've been in this business 3 times as long as I have.
That is just strong leadership, my friends. I'm going to take a second here, and that's what I define as situational authority. And a lot of times what happens is young leaders, they get in, they feel the position, they feel they have an ego around the thing, and they start, you know, giving directive on certain things they don't have actually authority or insight to. It actually takes a humble leader and a good leader to take a step back and say, hey, I don't know everything, but you know way more about this. Can you give me some coaching here? That's actually leadership. And Sarah, hats off.
Thank you, Bryce. It's been, they're my family. I mean, they've been a part of my family, whether through my mom or through me, for so long. And I am just so grateful for every single one of them.
That's awesome. Now, on the same vein, we're talking about transition and relationships and, you know, coming new identity, specifically towards your team, because you as the leader of the organization, it starts with your team. You pour into your team, and your team pours into your clientele. It's a different story considering you transitioned in. Usually when a new owner launches their business, it's from the ground up, right? So a different story, but that all in mind, how did that transition, how did the relationship, how did the camp transition from a client perspective? Because that's a whole nother element of complexity and challenge, because your mom built this great legacy. So not only do you have to come in, have a good understanding of the business, learn the business, you know, get your team to buy into you, but you also have to do that for your clients. So can you talk a little bit about the transition from their perspective? Yeah,
well, there's a lot of similarities between the team and the client, because while the team may not have been sure of what was going to happen, if this business was going to remain operational after her passing, imagine how the clients felt. You know, goodness. Like, they had this safe, beautiful thing in their lives that I know, even though they didn't say it, they were fearful that they were going to lose that. And, you know, my mom passed on Friday, September 3rd, and I was back in the office the next week. And some people might say that's crazy, but I knew that these people needed me, and selfishly, I also needed them. If there was going to be, you know, just that outpouring, that infinite source of love for me from people who really knew my mom, it was at boot camp. And in the same breath, I also wanted to be there to let them know that I'm okay, we're all going to be okay, and I'm here. And I wanted to be kind of that guiding post for them. And so I know that there was so many instances that people may have wanted to ask me, like, are we going to close?
Oh, yeah.
But they never did, you know, out of sensitivity for me. And I think that they've just supported my growth in so many ways. And, you know, the biggest reward has been the gratitude that I feel from them. And there was never any, you know, well, that's not the way Lisa used to do it. It was never that way. And I also...
But why do you think that is?
Well, why I think that is because I have been able to balance letting her flow through me and the ways that she operated the business and the way she cared for people, while also honoring my own unique capabilities and finding my own voice and stepping into my own power. And that was a pivotal point where I stopped thinking, what would she do? And started thinking, what am I going to do? Because this is my responsibility now. And I know she's with me. She makes it abundantly clear that she's always around me. But, you know, letting go of that, and I think that's something we had to do as a team too. Well, Lisa told us this. Lisa used to do it this way. Okay, but she's not here anymore, and we need to move forward.
How did you have that awareness? That is like wisdom beyond your years. I'm so blown away, because it really is a two-pronged approach. To understand that, hey, you know, honor your mom and the way she did things, so you create space there, But it can't be the only way, because then there's no future, right? You also have to be willing and to put your own flavor and kind of steer the ship as well. The opposite though, if you would have came in and not honored your mom, okay, either extreme would have been a losing cause. For the balance, that's just incredibly strong leadership and wisdom. How did you have that awareness?
Well, that's a good question. Well, it took time.
I was going to say it developed. There was an
Yeah,
aha.
I think it developed naturally. I mean, I think because her legacy is so alive in our program and in our community, without someone saying this is the way Lisa used to do it, I know who she was as a person. She was my mother. You know, I know that the level of love and care that she offered, that's the base. No one really cares about what internet provider I decide to use, or, you know, this or that. They don't see all that behind the scenes stuff. But if they feel loved and cared for and greeted and you know, seen when they come in our facility, then Lisa's still there and they feel that. And, you know, my mom and I were alike in a lot of ways, but also very different. And, you know, I stop and think a lot now. The challenge is, like, we're doing so amazing. I wish you were here. I wish you were here to see this, Mom. I wish you were here to do this with me. But like I said, I know she's around. And also she had a really big personality, and I don't know if the world could have handled both of us trying to run one location together. And so, you know, while she was more spontaneous and, you know, just kind of flew by the seat of her pants, which we loved about her, I'm a little bit more methodical, and which is good and bad. I've had to find that balance of making decisions with all of the information I have at any given moment, which was very little for a long time. I don't know. I just feel like that balance comes really naturally to me after being on the receiving end of all her love over the years, and also, you know, relishing in all of the love in our space. And it is strange now when people come in and they never met her. You know, that's a weird thing because we have clients that have literally been with us since the studio days.
15 years.
Yeah. And the loyalty that they have passed on from my mom to me and our team is just so special to behold. Whether they think I'm failing in comparison or not to my mom, they're not saying it. But no, you know, we just have a really amazing community of people. But it is strange, and we always, you know, I have a lot of pictures of my mom in our office. So a lot of times when a new client will come in and they'll hear, you know, if they're in the community, they know, is that your mom? Yep, that's her. She was amazing. I wish you got to meet her. But everything, what I always say, everything you feel in this space, that energy, that started with her.
That's touching. Hats off. I'm so impressed at maturity, the vision, the leadership. And I know that wasn't just, you know, beamed down from the sky. It was a process, but to be able to handle that with such grace and transition in such a challenging time, I want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
So, Sarah, looking ahead, and I appreciate you kind of giving insight in terms of the foundation and, you know, how everything, you know, came to be. What's your why? As you look, you know, to the forward, the future, you certainly are going to always honor your mom's legacy, but you're also carving out your own path. What's your why, and, you know, how do you see your legacy continuing on within your camp?
Great question. I mean, you know, the mission has been somewhat the same, right? She definitely laid the foundation for that. But I think for me to feel like I'm living out my truth, it's that we truly need to use our Fit Body location as a vehicle for changing the health and consciousness of our planet in a positive way. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You know, other business models, not as good as Fit Body, obviously, but that's the mission. That's my why. And I know that starts with self. You know, I have to operate at a level that feels good to me in order to pour that back out to others. And so I'm sure there'll be, you know, it's not so much about the programs we run or this or that, because it's about the way we show up to do all of those things. Are we living selflessly? Are we putting others before self? And also health, it's a full picture. You know, when I talk to clients, well, yeah, you could join Planet Fitness for $20, but they're a gym, we're a program. Do you want to transform your body, or do you want to transform your life? Because this is about mind, body, and spirit. That's so important for people to realize on their health journey. And all of us in the brand, we see that. We see that day in and day out, the way that what starts as fitness or maybe, nutrition or both changes the entire trajectory of someone's life. And guess what? That's what changes the health of our planet.
Amen. I don't know what other way to conclude the first part of this conversation, Sarah. That was divine. Well, thank you so much for that. We still have a little bit of time. You've been gracious with that. So I'm going to transition to a little bit of the bonus round to be able to glean some other gold nuggets from you, if that works for you.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, you certainly, maybe not intentionally, but fell into the entrepreneurship world, and you've taken and ran with it. It's so impressive. What does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur?
Taking extreme ownership. Taking extreme ownership, not just for our journey. I'm just a big believer in love, and how you choose to operate from a place of love or peace in your life, whatever business that is, whatever you're an entrepreneur of, is up to you. But we have a duty to take extreme ownership of this experience that we're having here. And depending on your belief system, I say to people all the time, we're all just flecks of dust floating in an infinite universe. So what are you going to do, That could either make things feel lighter or make things feel heavier. But for me, it's just, we only get this one shot. And in entrepreneurship, typically you have this unique opportunity to grow. And you asked about, like my growth. I see my growth happen through serving others. And so I really just wholeheartedly believe in kind of that place of servant leadership and giving back to the why, making this planet healthier, making the consciousness higher, operating at the best level possible.
Love it. Next up, a little lighter here, but who's your biggest hero and why?
Well, I think that one's a little obvious. Mom, absolutely. I can't imagine it wouldn't have happened, but I can't imagine being in this position and not having seen just her strength throughout it all, throughout her whole journey. I often think, if tragedy struck my life, would I be able to show up in the way that she did and to continue giving to others and to never, get down on herself, to never just, even the days you want to hide out in bed and throw it all away because you're in so much pain. She never did that. And that is so admirable. She was the most selfless person that I have ever met.
I want to honor her for that, but I also want to honor you for that, because that's exactly what you've done. You've shown up in a very, very challenging situation with chaos around you, and you've showed up and you've done it in stride. So good on you. Sarah, what's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is not living out the why that I just told you. I can't imagine being a part of any other industry now, because with that being my why, this is like the perfect vehicle to do that.
Totally.
Getting off course, but I don't think that's going to happen because I'm on it.
If you could have a business or life do-over, what would it be?
I think it would be reacting to things happening in your life. I won't pinpoint it on one instance, but I think I touched on kind of going toe-to-toe with my growth and going toe-to-toe with what was going on in my life. And if I could go back and tell my younger self, your reality is your responsibility, your perception is your responsibility, your thoughts, they create your world, so choose wisely.
You are in the business of giving great coaching advice, being our business model. What would you say is one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received, and why?
This is going to sound cliche, but it was 100% at World Conference when you said, stop dabbling. And I hear other franchise partners and coaches say it all the time, but it is so true. And that spoke to me so hard because I was getting in my own way. Like we dabble, fear holds us back, and we dabble and we dabble. And when we just kind of move beyond that fear, sometimes the fear comes with us. So much magic has happened, and so much magic has happened in my life since I stopped dabbling.
Last couple questions, Sarah. Parting piece of wisdom. There's someone watching this, inspired, listening to this. They're in a moment of transition, they're in a moment of change. They know they're meant for something more, but for whatever reason, there's this little doubt, there's this little inner critic in their back of their mind. What would you say to that person?
Trust. Trust that there's a reason that you have even an inkling of what you want to do in your mind, and the universe will take care of you with some hard work, no doubt about that. But, just release those doubts, because if you trust, and I know I keep saying it, but if you operate out of that place of love and peace, the right things will come down to you. And I'm going through another transition in my life right now, which I won't get into, but, trusting that the only things that come onto our path are the things that we're meant to receive and that we can handle. And they're not always good. It's not only when the good things happen, right? The bad things too, because there's lessons in everything for us. So just trust.
The last question for you, and a little bit different than entrepreneurship from my perspective, I don't want your take on it, but the name of this podcast is the Fitness CEO Podcast, the Chief Executive Officer Podcast. You are a CEO, Sarah, so from your perspective, what does it mean to be a Chief Executive Officer?
That's scary when you call me a CEO. I never thought of it that way. I'm going to have to take it back to the extreme ownership and, just recognizing that absolutely no one is coming to save you. You are, alone. Yes, we're surrounded by others, but you create your own reality. And, also in being a CEO, you better be ready to raise others up as you do so. Because if I can say anything about my growth, as I said, when I let go of the notion that I needed to focus just on me and what I was doing, my business exploded.
Incredible feedback, wisdom, and advice. Before we wrap, Sarah, I just wanted to take a second to thank you and acknowledge you, not only for being on the podcast, sharing your wisdom, sharing your story, which hopefully I know inspired a lot of people in the process, gave them also some tangible tools to help them through change and transition. But I would want to acknowledge you for who you are as a person. I absolutely love you. I love your energy. I love the way you show up, your positivity. You make me better. You make our brand better. And probably one of the biggest compliments I can probably give you is this. When I look at you, I see two things. I do see your mom, and I honor her because she had such a big impact on me. I wouldn't be sitting in the seat without your mom. She was definitely a very positive force in my younger days of Fit Body ownership, and I'm so grateful for that. And that carried the course of time all the way to 2022 or 2021 for passing. But while I view that, I also, in the secondary aspect, see an independent and a woman completely separate from your mom as well. And on an incredible path that I'm so blown away. You've had to overcome adversity and deal with the challenge and deal with the transition and really earn the respect of your team, of your clients, and your community. And for that, I have a lot of respect, love, and gratitude, so I acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. I'm having so much fun.
Well, friends, I know you got a ton of value. I certainly did in the process, so I want to give you a small request. Please like this video and share it so that we can keep producing content for you. And remember, no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time is now. Sarah, thank you.
Thanks,
I'll see you
Bryce.
in the next episode.